Welcome to On the Precipice MUFON Contact Radio Program with your hosts, CJ Arabia and Richard Banasek, where discovery, disclosure, and evolvement meet. We are on the cusp of evolutionary realizations, technologies, and awareness. So come along and share in the adventure of discovery of who we really are and where we are going.
Welcome, everyone. Here we are again. Hey, CJ, how are you?
Hi, Richard. I'm good. Thanks for asking.
So welcome, everybody, to On the Precipice. I'm your host, Richard Banasek, and CJ.
Arabia, like Lawrence of Arabia.
Right, I keep doing that. I'm sorry, Arabia.
A lot of people try to make it sound very fancy.
You know what I think about sometimes? Aribe. I don't know why I thought that.
A lot of people say it a lot of ways, so
Right,
it doesn't bother me in the least. Thank you for saying my name at all.
So we're here to continue our journey of discovery, evolvement, and awareness. We're really happy that you were able to join us. It's been an interesting week. We had some exciting stuff happen on the 5th of August, and I just think we should spend some time on our premiere that happened on the 5th of August and Tuesday. So oh my gosh, it was just cool. We went online, and then people were who went online to watch too. We were able to converse with them. Of course, CJ, you were there. You were the place
in the chat boxing live.
Yeah, you were. And so it was absolutely incredible, and just to see it on the big screen, the KGRA intro, and just the other programs that are a part of it. And
Bill making us sound so professional with that intro.
Right. And then, the thing about it, because that was our tribute show. I mean, the Earl, we have some more today, thank goodness, but the Earl tribute was really good. Earl's wife was able to watch the show, and many others were able to watch the show. And then it was funny because after, there was all kinds of views that actually really went up on it, and people were watching. So I just thought it was cool. I was very blessed and proud to have been a part of what you and I and Bill and KGRA have created.
I couldn't agree more. And just so people know, I think we're pretty much everywhere our podcasts are. So if you prefer to listen on Apple or YouTube or what is it, Rumble?
Rumble, yeah.
Yeah, there's all these different places. So you should be able to find it and subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts.
So, probably one of the biggest thing for me was
Signal.
I just thought KGRA and the way we looked and the way the show came across was just a very professional and well-oiled machine. So to be a part of something like that, I would have never thought. But so that's probably the biggest thing. And then, of course, our friends and people who appreciate what MUFON does, plus who are interested in the subject and who participated. So that was my takeaway from it. How about you?
Yeah, it was just so, I agree with everything you said. There were a lot of our good friends, obviously, and team members and, colleagues listening live and commenting, and that was super cool. And then a lot of people are listening through the week. And I don't know, it was just fun, and I'm glad that it's up. And I really look forward to the coming episodes and what we're going to be, the topics that are coming, knowing what's coming down the pike for some of these guys. I'm just excited. I love it. We're moving forward, right? We're moving forward.
And I think that, like you said, so for those of you who can be with us on the 19th of this month, our second episode is with Preston Dennett.
Mm-hmm.
Again, prolific writer, ufologist,
podcaster. And this is going to go live after that. So you'll want to listen back to when Preston Dennett was on by the time this goes live too.
Amazing show. So
it was an amazing show. And Dolly also, there's some amazing shows coming out.
Right. So I just think it's cool stuff. And we've been very blessed and to have the guests and have people want to participate with us. So I'm extremely happy and satisfied again to be a part of it. So
I couldn't agree more, and it's really fun doing it with you. You're so together. You have got it down. It's true though. I love your presentations. I love your visuals, and it is funny. It's kind of like our different personalities and different stuff.
So we were talking earlier today on social media, and we were talking about our minds and our lives in this subject. So I just want to bring up one thing. So as everybody knows, or maybe they don't know, we have a boutique farm in Colton near Loma Linda and Redlands. And so we grow all kinds of things, all boutique things, obviously. So I was looking at a pear tree, and we grew this big old pear. So I just want to show this to you. Look at that pear. Does that not look like a face, a mouth? Look at that thing.
It
and then
does.
to the side. And the funny thing about it is I made a joke with it because everything seems to look like an alien or something related to the phenomenon.
Mac and Me. Do you remember Mac and Me, the alien from that movie / McDonald's commercial?
I do. No, I do.
Doesn't it kind of have a Mac and Me face?
And it's just, who else it looks like is the Grinch.
Yes.
On the Christmas show. But it's just funny, but it's good to share. And by the way, when you grow your own pears or when you grow your own fruit or you touch nature and you can be creative that way and you have flowers and animals, you talk about a joy of life. So it's just something I want to share with everybody. But I still think he looks like the Grinch, or maybe
he really does.
Anyway, hey, so you have some news for us, and
Sure. Hey, hello. How's it going, everybody? Yeah, what was I going to talk about here? So I was going to talk about a little bit about Stellarium, the website Stellarium, for those of I think we've called our armchair field investigators that are out there that look at these cases. You're also the guys that report the cases to us a lot. Like I get a lot of cases from people who are really watching the sky a lot. And a couple of reports that I got in the last week were both people filming. So let's see. Let me go find my notes here really quick so I can get down to the there we go. These two cases right here. So 143404, 143342. So they both saw it happen exact same time and date, which is obviously, and they're both in Southern California, which I was like, okay, I got to go see these videos, which basically both match, and they are a light moving across the sky. And it's bigger than a satellite, but moving a lot like a satellite. And so I actually just said to the guy, like, you've got a camera aimed at the sky all the time. How about I show you the website we use? And that way, next time you see something like this, you can already rule out a few things for yourself, because I wasn't sure. I said, it could be a satellite hitting the sun. The sun glare at the right might make it look bigger than other satellites. Like the fact that it's bigger than other satellites, but still moving like a satellite. So, it was like a minute, and he went over to Stellarium and popped up, and let's see, can anyone pop it up on the screen? It doesn't matter. But if you go to the home screen of, it's not working, right? Only for me, so never mind. But at the bottom of Stellarium is a little gray box, and it has the date and time on it. And if you click that, you can change that to any date and time. It's you can go back and look at 2014. You're not going to see a lot of satellites in the sky back then. But if you look at June or July 26th at 9:30, there's a lot of satellites in the sky, and you can see the ISS making a perfect line down the middle of the sky, which is pretty much where both of these were. So that guy found it pretty quick for himself, and he was excited to have, I guess, a new tool for his own, sky watching and stuff like that. And so I told him you can check it on the website, or you can just use the app, which I know a lot of people like using the app. And I don't know, in future weeks, we'll probably talk about other apps that we use, like Flight Radar 24, things like that people can use to rule out things for themselves. And I think that's kind of it right now. I mean, I'm mostly excited to talk to Dustin.
One of the things that you said that we do, and anybody can do, we want to take we want to look and see if we can validate or vet something that either was an object or what the sky. So these programs and these websites or apps, actually, like Skyview, Stellarium, there's a couple of others.
There's a bunch of apps that do it.
Right. And so you can actually go on those. You can put a date, you can put a location, and then it'll give you what the sky looked like on that particular day, at night, day. they'll have a video that'll run the whole thing.
You can
and you
watch
can see
the satellites fly across the screen.
You can see the satellites, you can see the planets, you can see Venus. We get a lot of Venus related sightings. People are not aware of morning star, night star, it's bright. Wow, that's whatever. And even if they try to take a video of it, it kind of moves a lot because it pulsates. And then it looks like it's, some sort of craft or whatever. But again, this is, when we get into this, we talked about it. We want to go over what people look at, what we look at as investigators, to sort of teach them, to give them, the tools to do their own work, because everybody, is interested in it. And then as you evolve yourself in sightings and other things, especially in this phenomenon or anything in terms of education, you just need the tools. You just need to know where to go. And so that's one of the things that I agree with you. This is a very important aspect, and just to give them the tools to see,
especially if they're already interested in the topic.
Absolutely,
if you're already filming, launches, and then they're already excited about, interested in that when you have a camera on the top of your house. So yeah, I just thought that was cool. And also I do that a lot when I'm doing cases. I often, if I see somebody who seems interested in the topic, I'll guide them on how I solved it or figured out what it was, because many people are really interested in that kind of thing. I know I was.
Right. So, one of the things that we like on this program that we were trying to make sure is to educate, to evolve, to discover. And so my particular thing that I looked at this particular week that I thought was fascinating also had to do with the sky and astronomy and other related things. And it involved a show that I looked at. So this is the webcast of interest that I wanted to share with people. This is obviously Ross Cohart. That's Dr. Beatriz Villarreal. And this just happened probably 3 or 4 days ago on News Nation. And there's a link for those people who would like to view this. But what she talked about, what he talked about, to me is groundbreaking in its potential. So Dr. Beatriz Villarreal has this project called VASCO project. And what it is it's a vanishing and appearing source during the century of observation. And so as you can see there, it's an initiative that focuses on discovering short-lived transients in the sky. And it uses digital imagery in terms of historical to sort of search for these particular sources. And what it basically means is she had a hypothesis based on a number of issues, that because she believes that there's advanced civilizations out there, but trying to determine if what the astronomers were seeing years ago, to see if they either saw things that were in the sky and they could somehow validate that. So what she did is this project looked at data from the Palomar Observatory, and they looked at data from the early 50s. And what they did is they have these glass, I guess they use it for film, where they would take a picture of what they were observing through the telescope. And so what happened is they would take these particular items, as you can see here, and they would compare them shortly thereafter. And what they were looking for is, as you know, before 1957 in Sputnik, we didn't have anything in the sky. We didn't have anything in space. We didn't have anything in low Earth's atmosphere. So whatever was there was somebody else's, if there was anything there. And as you can see in this particular slide here, there's a couple of dots that are like on the left that are not there on the right. And she called those reflections of potential transient objects that were there and that were reflected and then were gone. Now, it wouldn't be that big of a deal, but what they found is thousands of these.
I was going to say there's a lot of dots missing.
Well, in this, but I'm going to show you another one. So what she found, they said, well, what are those temporal transient things? And so are they stars? Are they comets? Now, the reason why they're not comets is because these glass slides that you see created, in some cases, it took 45 to 50 minutes to create these slides from the telescopes by the astronomers in the early. Right. So they would take these and then they would be gone. And so the idea, and I'm going to show you this next slide, which I think is cool, because so these are all the slides. And as you can see, and I'm just going to, you can see it there. Can you see that a little bit better?
Yeah.
You can these slides, they're paired slides, and these are the dates and times. These are the actual images from the Palomar meter telescope that they took. And VASCO was trying to observe these glint patterns. And they call them glint because these are reflections that they would get, and then they would be gone. And so they tried to make a hypothesis as to, well, what could that be? The other thing that they found later, because somebody mentioned it, that they were beginning to believe that these were sort of, if you will, metal artificial objects. They weren't stars because they were reflective. And you would say, well, doesn't a meteor reflect? What about a comet? What they found about a meteor and a comet, if they took a picture that was very long, it would have streaks in it. But these were stationary objects for the period of time that they took it, and they had some sort of reflective ability on whatever their material was, whether it was metal or whatever.
What about planets?
They found hundreds of thousands of these. And then what they found is once they started looking at a couple of causations that they wanted to see if it was correlated, one was nuclear testing in the 40s and 50s, and one was UFO events. And so this one that I'm going to show you here is the one event that they were able to determine based on that specific day. I think it was June 12th, 1952. There was 9 objects, transient objects in space at the time when this flyover occurred. So let me see if I can get this flyover because I think you'll really like it. Let me see where I'm at here. Excuse me just for a second. I think we're here. I may not be able to get this fly. Oh, I thought it can. No. Well, anyway, so there was a flyover over Washington, D.C. I wanted to show it to you. And those dots that you see above the Capitol are the objects at that particular point. There were UFO. Many people saw them. There's a number of folks in cases studying. But what she was able to determine based on this pre-review paper that they have submitted is they believe these temporary transient objects were proof that there was somebody in our lower geosynchronistic orbit, and they believe that this is another way that we're able to determine or how history and about how we're able to use our today's technology prove that there was somebody or something else in our sky. And I thought that this whole episode was incredible. So anyway, she created a paper that's it's in peer review now. So she's not sure if it's going to be obviously passed through or there's going to be some arguments. She has a lot of thoughts on that. But the reality check episode went into this in great detail. But so what I did is I also put up her paper here if anybody wants to read it. I just think it's incredible that a scientist now has been able to look pre-satellites from our own technology, 1957, and all of a sudden they found hundreds of transient
objects
or whatever they were. Now they were able to determine that of those, discounting glass glitches, discounting, times, discounting 30 to 40% were actual objects, and those are in the hundreds of thousands of objects that were in our orbit temporarily, or they would glint. You know how we get pictures all the time in MUFON, and all of us, UI and everybody else who does sightings, we get these glints, we get these lights, we get the reflection. Same thing, with what we see at satellites at nighttime. If you look at nighttime, sometimes you'll see a satellite will blink in and blink out. It's a satellite because our data and information says it's a satellite. But back then, there was no satellites. So the question is whatever. So I just thought this was a cool, groundbreaking information.
Fascinating.
It's science-based. anybody's interested in this stuff, to me, this is cutting edge stuff. And
you know what
I
it
really
makes me think of? Are you those old fashioned or those old paintings you've seen with many objects in the sky? They have different shapes sometimes. And the minute you see, and some of those photos, you can see if you look at them up close. Hey, Dustin, to bring him in. That's fine. It's fine with me.
Well, no, I'm just trying to make sure where this.
Oh, okay. But it just reminds me of those paintings, because it's a bunch of objects you could see in some of those images.
Well, it's just amazing. And, for years, and you all know that there's been astronomy books done, and they've been seeing objects since the 16th, 15th, 14th century, not only in our space and, obviously in other planets, but this was just her work based on the polymer slides that they were created from the 50s. And they were able to use all these slides. They got a bunch of them, and they were able to determine there's transient glint objects in them, and then they're gone. Sometimes minutes, sometimes hours, but they're gone now. Wow. And in most cases, they appear to be metallic. They appear to be artificial. So then it begs the question, what was in the sky in 1952? Wasn't us. We may have did a lot of things in terms of rockets and all that kind of stuff, but it wasn't us. I just think it was a cool thing, and I just wanted to share with everybody. And please go over to the podcast that showed it, and also go over to where the paper is. A bunch of cool stuff. So I'm glad that we're able to share that. And so from there, I wanted to also talk about we do pictures that we think of the week, books, information, and other things. So this comes off the Wow Signal website. And this is just a cool picture that somebody took that I just, what it is, what it isn't, it's left to the beholder. But you can see here that this is a UAP photo of the week that was courtesy of the gentleman there, Ken Pfeiffer, founder of the website there. And it can be accessed from that webpage. And it's just a really cool shot that was in the sky that I just thought, from October 13, 2010. And, we get these all the time. And, I try to tell everybody, look up, use your phone, get a camera if you want to, but they're all over the place. And again, it's just peripheral. And it's just, it just shows that it's everywhere. It's not something it's not anymore. You can't say, well, it was just, swamp gas or glints or or balloons or whatever people is. It's real. It's there. And again, this is another example of that. So I just thought it was cool. The web signal. Tell us about
the Wow Signal. Yeah, it's part of.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say it's just it's one of Dan Harari's projects, and it's awesome. It's a news platform that's just for the UFO UAP contact phenomenon, and it's at the wowsignal.news. And Dan Harari is going to join us. I don't know if it's next week or the following week, but he's going to join us and give us some of the latest news sometimes. And I write a column that's out there once a month, and there's a lot of other people writing columns for them. And it's just all news. It's great. It's all breaking press releases. We were doing the press release for this show and other shows on there, and it's fun. I mean, I love it. I love Dan. He gets a lot of people working together. And I'm looking forward to him joining us on the show.
You want to mention the Hollywood Disclosure?
Sure. The Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. I'm on the board over there. And Dan also started that. Dan and Stephen Bassett, basically bringing together people from the UFO contact and community and people from Hollywood. So the people who can film the stories and make projects, and then trying to bring an authentic message so that they're not all Independence Day. And so more like truth in broadcasting, truth in storytelling. And you can become a member. There's live events. They usually have them in Sherman Oaks here. So if you're in Southern California, it's fun at the White Fire Theater. Great speakers. And Dan's a mensch, and he's awesome. And there's also a new documentary they just made that's out. I believe it's on Prime right now. So people making things happen.
Very incredible good work that he's doing, and especially he has an association with MUFON too. So, so I just good pictures. We want to make sure that we recommend and suggest these different forums and these different mediums, because this is where people are going to find out more information. They're going to find out things about the subject that they probably wouldn't find anyplace else, especially
Yeah.
because of our interest in it. So
Yeah.
way cool.
And sign up for the newsletter. You'll get your email. You'll get your email every
Absolutely.
other
A lot of
week
good
with all
stuff
the
on
news.
there.
It's great. It's worth it because it's not a ton of emails. The news comes out every other week or so. And then just as always, MUFON needs field investigators, and you can just go to MUFON.com. You can join. That's the first step, is join, become a member of MUFON. And then you can either email, Richard and I will give you our email address throughout the show, but you can see here where you join. And then also, if you've seen a UFO or felt that you've had contact, please use those red buttons at the top. That's what they're there for. They're there for you. If you haven't reported
Absolutely.
it,
Yes.
please do. There are people who want to solve your case, look at your case, examine your case, and also just help you if it's a contact experience. So please do that. And your case is going to go to someone just like Richard or myself or Dustin. We're all MUFON field investigators and ERT members, experiencer resource team members. So.
I thought that was a nice introduction to our guest here.
Yeah.
We can bring him on, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody. Dustin, are you there anywhere?
Hey, what's up?
Is.
Hey, Dustin.
I don't know which picture is this. That's live. There's this picture obviously is his MUFON director, Utah State director picture. I actually like the other picture from his Facebook page. But,
pretty cute.
Welcome.
Welcome. Hey, real quick, I've chatted with both of you before in the past, and UFOs never came up with a conversation. I didn't know you guys were into them.
We just like hanging out with other people that are into UFOs.
Okay. No, this is awesome. Congratulations on the show. This is amazing.
Thanks, man. Thanks for
Thank you.
being on.
So, it was funny. You and I had talked, and we talked about just some things that we may go over.
Sure.
And, this is just a general thing. We talked about your background, just your own interest. And we want to hear your work. We like what you're going to say about Earl, because he too, you're going to tell us, and you were able to present some stuff at the 2025 MUFON, maybe a case or two. I really want to talk about the ranch investigation that you did at the ranch there, which is just south. I think it's south of Skinwalker Ranch. And then if we have any questions, I think that would probably be cool. So I was wondering, would you like to just get into some of these slides, and you can tell us that, and we can just talk, because the good thing about them, this is you recently. So let's talk about the MUFON symposium, and you presented, and tell us about what you presented, and then we'll go through some slides related to Earl and all that. So tell us about the MUFON 2025 symposium.
Sure. So I've been there multiple times. This is my third symposium, and it's always a great energy. There's a lot of great people there. And it's funny, if you're presenting, you think of yourself as like a teacher or sharing information. But I think Tim Ains, the assistant state director of ERT, put it best. He said, 50% is MUFON and the presenters educating people, and the other 50% is we're being educated by talking with experiencers and people who've had these encounters. And honestly, probably my favorite part of the whole event was the experiencer workshop, where they allow people to come in. You have people from the ERT. So you have George Medich, Tim Ains was there, Matthew Kellison, and Rusty from Florida chapter. And really, it's the time for the audience. They're the ones that can talk about whatever they want to talk about. And a lot of them shared their experiences with us. And it's just such an eye-opening thing. And another person pointed out that you could have two people, one person having a very negative experience talking about it, and you could have someone that has a really positive experience, but no one's arguing. No one's saying, hey, you're wrong because of this, or you're wrong because of that. The energy in the room is, everyone's being open and honest, and we're trying to do what we can to figure this out. But also it's all about community. It's all about people, allowing people to tell their stories. And I was lucky enough to take over the experiencer event. It was originally Earl was going to do it. He did it last year. He was going to do it this year. And he called me, out of the blue in March, saying that he had some health issues, as you guys both know. And he wanted me to take over the emceeing job. And I hate emceeing. I'm more of a presenter, I would say. An MC, I'm okay at presenting, but there's certain energies that I think an MC has that makes them worth their weight in gold, and I'm not that. but I knew it was important, and I knew I wanted to do my best for Earl. So he actually had George Medich present there. He had Barbara Lamb, the great Barbara Lamb, who's been doing this for like 50 years or something like that. She investigated crop circles with John Mack, like over in England. And so just this insane wealth of knowledge. And then, of course, the great Deborah Jordan Cobble, who I got to meet, and she's just the greatest person ever. And for those of you who don't know, Bud Hopkins wrote a book about her. He came out with The Missing Time, which I think is one of the foundations and one of the like Mount Rushmores of books in which experiencers began reading and went, oh, wow, so this speaks to me in a way. And you hear so many experiencers like Deborah say she opened up the book, she began reading it, and she couldn't even like finish it. It would make her nervous and anxious. What's that?
Is that her in the center there?
That's her in the center.
With you and her, and okay.
So she wrote Bud Hopkins a letter. And I believe Bud Hopkins at that time probably felt like, hey, I'd seen and heard it all after that. And he started talking with her and realized, man, her story is just so unbelievable that he ended up writing a book. It's called The Intruders, the Copley Woods Incident. And it's quite eye-opening, bone-chilling. She's had a lot of encounters. And when I was talking with Earl, he was super excited to have her on because she sort of released the book under a fake name, fake city that it happened in. And she sort of went dark for many, many years, for decades. And he was able to get her to come back. She's barely starting to open up and tell people about it. She released a book a couple of years ago talking about her experiences later called Extraordinary Contact. And it's just one of those things where if you're a UFO nerd like we are, going to these conferences and you're able to talk to these people, it is something special. You do feel like trying not to take for granted that you can talk to these people and get some information and really just be one-on-one with them. And she's one of the funniest, most down-to-earth people I've ever met. And she was super happy to help MUFON. Even though, and she said in her presentation later that when Bud Hopkins and her reached out to MUFON back in like the 80s, wanting them to investigate her backyard, which they believed there was a landing there. They had an actual part of the grass was just burnt away and nothing grew there afterwards. MUFON wouldn't touch it. Like it was sort of a different time, I think, when MUFON wouldn't go on site when it came to close encounters. It was almost like, hey, we're not even going to be involved with this. And so fast forward a couple decades later, and now we're inviting her to speak. It was pretty powerful for me. And I told her that you have been vindicated. It's no longer the nuts and bolts crap. Right. Like we are interested in people's experiences, and especially if we're trying to figure this out, anyone that's had contact with non-human intelligence, I think they hold bigger pieces of the puzzle for us figuring this out. So it really was like a special thing. And then I really wanted to give homage to Earl. So in the beginning, I said some words about him because it's funny the things you remember. I remember the first time I heard of Earl, I was in Cincinnati. I was going to the conference, and at the time I was just a field investigator. So when I touched down, I texted the state director at the time, Brian Lindley, and I said, hey, I just want to let you know I touched down at the symposium. And unfortunately, he couldn't be there. And as he said, oh, cool, have fun. As a total joke, I was like, hey, is there any other state directors giving you issues? You want me to get them in a headlock as a joke? And he said, LOL, I do need you to say hello to one person. His name is Earl Gray Anderson, and he's the state director for Southern California. He's a badass guy. That's what he wrote. And I still remember having two thoughts in my head. The first one was the dude's named Earl Gray, like after the T. And the second one was, how does he know this person? Because you're at this conference, you have all these state directors, you have all these field investigators, all these people involved in MUFON, and there's only one person that he wanted me to say hi to. And I thought that was strange in the moment. And later I was like, maybe he knew him from a previous life, or maybe Earl was in Utah, or maybe I didn't know how they knew each other. And then later I just found out he was like, no, I've seen him in state director meetings, and I love his energy, and I've reached out to him and said hi, and he's always been sweet to me. And it wasn't until I became a assistant state director and I was allowed in those meetings that I instantly got what he was talking about. Earl had this incredible innate positivity to him, and he had this way of making you feel like you had known him your entire life. I had joined the ERT team. I was lucky enough to sort of submit my paperwork and go through that process, and I became an ERT member. And I remember being so proud of the ERT and being part of it. And I remember during a state directors meeting, some people were sort of upset and doing what they can to try and dismantle the ERT. They're like, we don't want this in MUFON. They just wanted to get rid of it. And I remember being really upset and kind of going, wow, isn't this sort of like the crown jewel of what we have is the ERT team? Isn't this sort of like our special forces? Isn't this something that we should be heralded and we should celebrate? And I reached out to Earl for whatever reason. I said, there's one person that I should email. And I did. And he sent me the most sweet email back, basically saying, you know, this kind of happens. Don't worry about it. Just keep doing what you're doing. Everything's good. And he said, change has to come from within. I remember him saying that in that email. And it really just started a conversation between me and Earl. And we started talking a little bit more. And I started, you know, seeing him on podcast and him talking about his background. He had a mother who was the assistant to Howard Hughes. And he has story after story of just strange things that Howard Hughes was doing. And some of the things that sometimes as a mother, she held these very high clearances, military clearances. But if you're with someone and you keep bugging them, eventually every now and again, they're going to slip and say something that maybe they shouldn't. And some of those tidbits that he received were just so fascinating to me. And I felt sort of like compelled to keep in touch with him. And then eventually I'd go out in January to speak to the Southern California chapter. And that's really where everything came together. There's a picture of us in that music shop.
The West Valley Music Center.
The West Valley Music Center, yes. And man, I knew he was going through some health issues. I could tell he wasn't moving that well, but it never let him down. He was always positive. I could tell he was in pain, but he was always positive, always happy. And I could tell the chapter just loved him. I showed up. You had, you know, you there, Richard, and Mike Rizzo, and all these other investigators, and just people from the community who loved him so much. And in your head, you always think, oh, this is the start of like something bigger. I always envisioned in my head 5-10 years from now working with Earl and calling him up and exchanging ideas. And so I think it was, you know, shocking to not just me, but a whole bunch of people, how quickly his health declined and him going. You know, it was just such a positive force. You never imagined him being gone.
Yeah. Like at Christmas, you would have never thought it. And then. Exactly.
Yeah. And man, it still pains me because the last time we talked on the phone, even though he told me the diagnosis and he was a nurse, so he knew that it wasn't exactly positive. He remained positive. And he said, you know, I really want to focus on two things, my family, you know, and getting better. And I want to write my book. And unfortunately, he never got to write that book. And that would have been one hell of a book. That would have been one of the greatest. I think it would have been something that would have been heralded as the great novels or autobiographies of a UFOologist who grew up with a very interesting mother and a background that was just endlessly fascinating.
Yeah. Amazing.
So let me ask you. So I think a lot of people want to know because, you know, they don't know you. They don't know who you are. A lot of folks do. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about Dustin, you know, your background, and then how you got involved in the subject, ufology, and then also MUFON. So let's just spend some time with that.
Absolutely. So I always believed that there was other life out there. I was never like a huge UFO person, but I always enjoyed learning about space. And I always enjoyed scientists and astrophysicists and them telling you just how vast the universe is and how we're just like a grain of sand on the beach if you look at the Earth compared to all the other worlds out there. I always thought there was other life out there, 100%. There's no way you could stare out in the sky and hear all this, how vast it is, and not go, well, we can't just be the only ones. Like, it's just there. But I was not super into it till later, probably 2017 ish. I was at work one day and it was kind of a slow day and I was listening to music, and there's a musician I really love. His name is Jason Molina. And there's a song called Farewell Transmission, which might be one of my favorite songs ever. It really, I could go on for days about the meanings behind it, but one of the lines is Will o' the Wisp he talks about. And I didn't know what that was. And so I Googled what is will-o'-the-wisp. And I found out that it means, lights that people see in the forest. Some people credit them, swamp gas, or in ancient times, fairies through the forest. And they just called it will-o'-the-wisp. So here's how far I've come from there to now. I still believed, I was like, you know what? There's probably a lot of people, especially in areas that are swampy, that are seeing swamp gas and reporting it. So in my head, I go, there's got to be a place down south that is like Old Faithful, where you can go out on a boat and see these swamp gases. I was like, that'd be cool to see in person. So I start Googling places to see will-o'-the-wisp. A website comes up, and it was something like top 10 places to see will-o'-the-wisp. Number one was like Florida, somewhere in Florida. I go, okay, yeah, there's very swampy areas out there. So I start reading, and it gets into some guy saw a UFO, a saucer outside his house, and he was visited by aliens. And I'm like, I don't want it. What is this? And I go to number 9. It's like Louisiana. I go, okay, here we go. Here's some more swampy areas. Same thing. Someone sees some lights in the sky. They attributed aliens. They go into some other UFO cases. So at this point, I'm like, I don't want this. What the hell is going on here? But it's that part of your brain, that clickbait thing where you go, I have to see what number 1 is for whatever reason on this list. So I scroll all the way down to number 1, and it said the number 1 place to see will-o'-the-wisp is Skinwalker Ranch, Utah. And I went, what?
Wow.
What the hell? And this is in my backyard, right? Like, I've been to Vernal before in that area. So I start reading the stories behind the Shermans in the book, The Search for the Skinwalker, and then George Knapp's book. And man, it pulled me in a way that I don't think anything else has. And I remember just reading and researching for like 2 hours. I should have been working, but I ended up researching just a bunch of UFO stuff, and especially Skinwalker Ranch. And that was sort of my entryway into the phenomena. And then it took years before I came around to MUFON. I grew up in a very small town called Wellington. There's an area out there called 9 Mile Canyon, and it's considered the world's largest, longest art gallery, because there's just miles and miles of petroglyphs. Very beautiful. And I do believe that the Native Americans were writing what they saw on the wall. I do believe that there's a very small percentage that's artistic, or what you call rock art, because humans are just artistic in general. But I do believe a vast majority of what you see is not rock art, but rock history. And I do think they are telling stories of seeing star people and portals and all of that. So I was just curious. I said, hey, I just typed in, is there any UFO sightings in 9 Mile Canyon? And this guy's blog came up saying that he was out there camping alone. He had a camper and 2 dogs, and it was getting nighttime, and he wanted to take one more last look at the stars of the night. And he saw a black, sort of like oblong object hovering over the mountainside or the hillside, completely silent. It had some lights on it. He said he saw it for a couple seconds, and it went back behind the horizon. And he said, yeah. And the next morning I ran into somebody at a gas station, and I was just telling them about it. And they said, hey, you should report this to MUFON. So that's when I went, oh, let me go to MUFON. And I probably had heard it before, but I never looked into it. And then when I found they had access to the database, I was like, what? You can have access to the data? I couldn't believe it. And it was like $7 or something for the month. So I just signed up, and I started like digging through that database, like feverishly looking up cases. And after a while, I decided, oh, you can be a field investigator. So then I joined up, and it's been sort of history since. I've sort of just been working cases. I had a very wonderful teacher. The state director was Brian Lindley, amazing guy, love him to death. I wish he was still part of the chapter. He left. I begged him not to, but he ended up going, and then eventually I became the state director. So that's sort of how I got involved with MUFON, and I can say it's probably been it's been a lot of work, but it's been the most rewarding work I've ever done. I can tell you that much.
So are you originally from Utah, or were you born there? What about your family, and any history of stuff related to that? And
so born and raised in Utah. My mother has always been into paranormal stuff. I don't think there's a paranormal TV show she has not watched multiple times. Very much into it. Always believed it. And growing up, I sort of, as a teenager, I think you're trying to cut your own cloth or get away from your parents. my father had multiple paranormal experiences, which he didn't really quite talk about. And one time he sort of was opening up to me, telling me about it. And at that time, I did not believe in it 100. I didn't believe in it at all, the paranormal stuff. And I told him, I don't want to hear this. Like, it's just, I don't believe this is kind of bogus. And I could tell he kind of got emotional and he stopped talking about it. Now that I'm completely into it, I'm going off doing paranormal investigations. It really pains me that happened. I look back and I go, why couldn't you just listen to him for like 5 minutes? And it really is something that it kind of bugs me. I've gotten over it, but sometimes you think about that moment. You go, God, why couldn't I have just listened to his story? And it's funny how I don't believe there's coincidences in the world, because what I was telling you earlier is that musician Jason Molina, who led me down this path by Will o' the Wisp, my father introduced me to his music. And I became a huge fan after that. So I think certain things are lined up that we believe we have this illusion of choice. But I do believe that it's sort of our destinies that brought us here to MUFON. And it's sort of these paths that we think we had these choices to join, but there's little things here and there along the road that nudged us on this path. Right. So in the end, he eventually won, and now I'm way into the paranormal. And I think it's one of the things that I love most about ERT is that we can listen to someone's entire history, and it will include paranormal encounters, like, period. There's no ifs, ands, and buts. It's not like, hey, stop talking about this apparition you saw. Stop talking about this ghost. I just want to talk about nuts and bolts craft. We're very interested in your entire story. So yeah, that's sort of my background as far as family is concerned. And then I got my mom into UFO stuff now, and she's very like into UFOs and stuff, but I always ask her about paranormal because she has the most knowledge that I know of anyone to tap onto.
So tell us about the Utah MUFON chapter that you're a part of. Tell us about what you do in terms of training monthly. I know you have a number of podcasts. I think people would be excited to hear that and see that and have some access to it. So just before you go, I just want to make sure, is this the place that they can get all that on?
Yeah, so that's really my social media. And also, MUFON and YouTube. But really what I do on my social media is just post cases. I think MUFON is an amazing organization. The field investigators are amazing. I love talking with people like you guys, just chatting and learning more. And I think they do a wonderful job of allowing people to submit cases. The one thing I will say that is sort of my only critique about MUFON is they don't display the cases to the public enough. I think they really have this. They're sitting on a gold mine. There's over 143,000 cases on their digital database. And really the only chance you have of hearing these stories is going to the symposium where they have the best of the year. And then they have the best of the ERT cases. And then also going to local chapter meetings. Yeah. I think there's got to be another channel or another way that we're getting this out, especially with social media and allowing people to see these stories. So that's my social media. If you want to go on there, I dig through the database. I find cases. I explain them a little bit. I show any photos that are on it in really short clips. You only have up to 90 seconds. So some of them I can't get into detail, but I've gotten a really good response with those postings, and I plan on continuing to do that.
So let me ask you, so one of the things I would like us to talk about is, and because you and I have talked about this many times, is just cases. That's how you and I met. I want to talk about some of that. So I'm going to ask you a couple of things, but since we are already up there, and I think that it would be good to talk. So let's talk about this particular event here.
Okay. This one was amazing. So to give you a little background to your audience, this picture was taken in the Uinta Basin, a place called SpaceWolf Research. So it shares a property line with Skinwalker Ranch. It's just south of it. So on the left there, that's the owner, Ryan Burns. So Ryan Burns is a very interesting person. I think most people develop an appetite for the unknown throughout their lives. I believe people like Ryan Burns were just born with it. Talking with his mother, she told us that from a young age, like 3 or 4 years old, if they drove past a cemetery, he would kick and scream and cry until they pulled over so he could go walk through the cemetery and like sit among the graves.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I think he has an intense connection with the unknown, and he's had a million things sort of happen to him. So he grew up in the area, in the Uinta Basin. And for those of you who don't know, in 94, there was a family called the Terry Sherman and his family bought the property, which is now known as Skinwalker Ranch. And they were cattle ranchers. They lived off the land. Everyone you talk to that has met them said they're down to earth, blue collar people, great part of the community. For the next about 2 years, they had very bone chilling encounters, seeing orbs, beings, UFOs coming in and out of the mesa. They've had cattle mutilations. They had a lot of dogs that would go chasing these orbs, and then they'd find them flattened into the ground. It got to a point where they were afraid to sleep in their own room, so they had all the beds pulled out into one area in the living room, and they would sleep there. And eventually, he went to the press in '96. And told of these stories. And that's when Robert Bigelow was able to use $22 million of government funding to buy the ranch and investigate it. So once that story broke about the Shermans, people in the community called it UFO Ranch. So a lot of high school kids would go out there. They would take a date. They would jump over the fence. And they would try to scare each other. Sometimes they'd see something. Sometimes they wouldn't. So when Bigelow took over, I was talking with a woman who grew up in the area, and she told me that after Bigelow took over, her and her friends referred to it as Gun Barrel Ranch. And I said, what do you mean by that? And she said, well, when Bigelow owned it, if you got anywhere near the property, you would just get a gun in your face. Like they had military security there. Like they weren't playing around. So Ryan, who was very interested in this topic, said, well, we got to get as close as we can. So the property that's now SpaceWolf, him and his buddies used to sneak on there. Sometimes people would be living there. Sometimes they wouldn't. They would camp out and they would see strange things, hear strange things. They'd have strange experiences. So years later, in 2021, he purchased the ranch and called it SpaceWolf Research. And when I became state director, I'll be the first to admit I used that title quite a bit to try and get my foot in the door in certain places. And he allowed us out on the ranch back in April of 2024. And he could not have been more gracious. We took the assistant state director, Ben Stoll, out there. We took an experiencer. My buddy who's into paranormal investigations, Cody Sparks, went out there. I had to bring my mom. I had to flex a little bit and bring her out there. And we were on the property. And while we were sort of walking through the areas, we had this tri-field meter out. And when you got closer to Skinwalker Ranch, you started to see these bumps on the tri-field meter. Closer you got, the more frequent and more intense the electromagnetic energies would hit. And we were just walking around, and there's this wooded area. And we happened to just find what we thought was, I first thought it was a claw. I said, this has to be like a black bear claw that I got. But it ended up being a tooth that we found. And in this picture here, that one in my hand, that was right where I found it. And then off to the right is the tooth on the right. And on the left, those are coyote teeth. So one of the earliest encounters that the Sherman family had was like a week or two after they bought the ranch. Terry Sherman and his son were outside, and it was nearing sunset. And they saw a giant wolf near one of their cars. And they described it as being as tall as one of their cars. So they were freaked out at first. They're like, oh, man, there's like a wolf on our property, this enormous wolf. But the wolf dropped its head and it put its tail between its legs and it walked towards them as if it was domesticated and friendly. And it actually came up and they were able to pet it on the head. So they said, oh, this must be a neighbor's dog. And it's getting late. So, they told it to shoo. They're like, get out of here. Go home. Go home. The wolf starts walking away and it walks past one of their pens that they had cattle in. And there was a calf that was right next to the fence, and this wolf just stuck its whole head in and grabbed the calf by the face and started trying pulling it out. So it is Utah; it's a red state, so everyone's packing heat. So Terry Sherman pulls out his pistol, he fires some shots into this wolf. The wolf does not budge, does not move, doesn't do anything. Tells his son to go in the house and grab the rifle. Son comes back with a 30-06. Terry Sherman takes aim, fires a bullet. Finally, it lets go of the calf and runs off. So they go over to the pen and they check on the calf, and then they say, this is a big problem. This is our livelihood, and we have this wolf that's going to just kill everything. So they decide to try and track it down, and they follow the footprints, and there's some blood trail, and eventually they get to a point where the footprints and the blood trail just completely stop. And so they had to ask themselves, what is this that we saw? And so people always say, well, maybe it was a dire wolf. The problem is the dire wolf went extinct 10 to 12,000 years ago. And there has been multiple sightings of what people would describe as a dire wolf in the Uinta Basin. Sometimes they'll see it for a couple seconds before it disappears behind trees or brushes. And so when we found that tooth, I just assumed it was a claw, but when I brought it home and realized, oh, this is like a canine tooth, we started analyzing it. And we actually sent it to an expert. His name's Ben Woodruff. If you ever watch Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, he's on there. He's the one that took the actual skull and analyzed the skull that they found. And he compared it to some of the other teeth that they have, and he believes that it is of wolf origin or coy wolf origin, which is a sort of hybrid between coyote and wolf. So it is an interesting find. I will be signing the tooth back to Ryan this Saturday. I'm doing a thing called Moonlight Gathering. And we thought about sending it off to a lab to get a DNA test. The problem is, and this is what people run into, is when you send these things in, they have a thing of getting lost.
Yeah, they have a tendency.
They have a tendency of getting lost. And in that first tooth they sent from Skinwalker Ranch was the biggest one that was in that jawbone. They sent it to a lab. I won't say the lab's name. They said that they received it. They were working on it. And then when Ben called a week or two later, they said, yeah, let's go check. And they said, oh, yeah, we don't know where your tooth is at.
Yeah.
It just disappeared. And luckily they had a whole jawbone, so they were able to send more teeth in. And they found that the tooth that they had was 11% canine lupus, and the other 89%, they do not know what it is.
Right. It was a very, if I'm not mistaken, it was a very small percentage of what they could identify. The most that they couldn't identify, I think it was like almost all of it, they did not know what it is. So
Correct.
Just before we continue,
Sure.
we're going to probably go to a break right now.
Sure.
And then I would love to come back, and I just want to continue this story. And then I want you to tell us not only about the dire wolf, if you're able to, or whatever you can tell us, maybe what else you saw and did while you were there on your investigation. So
Absolutely.
what we're going to do is we're just going to go to a break, and then we'll come back shortly.
Hold on to your seats, Cosmic Explorers. KGRA Digital Broadcasting, the unrivaled #1 source for raw, uncensored paranormal and UFO talk radio, has just unleashed a sizzling online merch store. Stay cosmic on the move with accessories, rugged phone cases, vibrant yoga mats, and notebooks perfect for jotting down UFO sightings. Ignite your obsession with the unexplained through bold, exclusive gear that demands attention. Kicking off with the Supernova, the store launches 2 heart-pounding collections, KGRA Digital Broadcasting and Bishop James Long. Every item you grab helps power the network and its groundbreaking shows. Stand with the truth seekers. Act fast, score your stellar swag, and join the uprising today.
So you don't care about his life. You just care about covering up your little top secret stuff going on. Meanwhile, this man's dying. How dare you put these people in the military to defend us, and then when they come out, you just kick them to the curb.
As UFO reports come in from around the world, the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON, is there. We continue to explore new cases and build our massive database. We share our information with the world in a number of ways. If you would like to be part of our investigative team, you are always welcome. What could be more exciting than exploring the UFO question firsthand? Join MUFON, find your friends.
So we're all back. And, I really want to continue with the dire wolf thing, but it's funny that you said I was watching, obviously, the episodes of Skinwalker. So a couple of things. His name was Woodruff.
Ben Woodruff.
Yeah. Yep. So he's been on. One of the things that they found recently, and the ones that was they call it scat. Obviously, that's when the animals use the bathroom and all that kind of stuff. But this particular scat, when they analyzed it, I don't know if you guys saw the episode. It actually had consumed what they believe coyote in it. And they didn't know what would eat a coyote. Like that. And again, then the footprints, I remember them having the footprints, and then some of the other things that they've, just found. And, you think about it, and I want you to go into to this again with the ranch that you're at, but just the idea of it potentially being a dire wolf or something that's evolved that is a dire wolf. And then, of course, the whole idea about, the stories of the wolf on its hind legs, moving, walking, the red eyes, going in and out of what appears to be some sort of either energy portal or whatever. It's just amazing. And then, of course, in this particular ranch, now I just want to make sure we did say it's on the south side and it buttresses Skinwalker. And as we all know, this is not just a Skinwalker ranch thing. The whole Uinta Basin has been inundated. And so the book that we're going to share for this podcast, I don't want to spoil it, but it'll go into that for those people who are really involved. But please continue about the story of your investigation and the ranch and what else that you found.
Absolutely. So it is interesting that you say that they found that scat that had coyote fur in it.
Right.
So Ben was saying he's been out there multiple times. He says that the population of animals in the area, especially ones that would be prey to a coyote, are skyrocketing on the ranch. And outside areas are actually going down. So he was saying that one of the possibilities is, like you were alluding to, Richard, is that something is eating the coyotes. He talks about how wolves typically they may kill a coyote, but they typically will not consume one because it's too similar to them.
Absolutely.
So what is it that is killing these coyotes, right? You do have the legend of the Skinwalker, which in this area, I mean, there's a lot of Native American tribes have their own version of Skinwalker. The one that's in this area comes from Navajo lore. Someone that can shapeshift and change into animals, someone who's sort of into what you call the dark magics, committed a horrendous act, usually murder, and then they have these abilities. So Ryan Burns himself, the guy who owns SpaceWolf Research, had an encounter with a Skinwalker. It's one of the things that sort of led him to buying the property, I believe. He said he was driving on a pretty desolate road, and he saw someone with a blanket over their head walking down a hillside. And he said they were so far away from town that he said, man, this person's going to die out here. It was in the middle of summer. And so he pulled over. He said, hey, do you need a ride? This person or whatever got in his vehicle. I think they might have said something, but he couldn't quite make it out. And next thing you know, he's waking up near Bottle Hollow Reservoir. His car door's open, and the only thing that's holding him in his place is his seatbelt. He's sort of slumped to the left. So he calls. I can't remember if the Ute police came out there and were the ones that woke him up.
You're saying missing time?
100%. Yep.
Oh,
and his car was in a different area. It somehow parked itself in Bottle Hollow Reservoir. So the Ute police came out, and of course they said, well, how much have you been drinking? They gave him the breathalyzer and all that, and he passed it. And then one of the Ute police officers said, oh, you just had an encounter with a Skinwalker. That's what they told him. So could it be that these Skinwalkers are killing and eating these coyotes? It's possible. I know it sounds very far out there for maybe people who haven't been in the area or aren't into the Native American lore, but there have been a lot of people that have cited these Skinwalkers, especially in this area. Our investigation would take, we found that tooth kind of during the day. In the nighttime, we decided to fly a drone. And I knew that we wouldn't be able to see much, but I said, I'm going to fly my drone. I'm going to just point it towards Skinwalker Ranch. Later, I'll go through the data. Maybe we'll find something. Maybe we won't. So I fired up the drone. I fired up the controller, and the controller started saying it had this error that kept flashing off and on randomly. It said, please move drone away from magnets or metal. And I was like, what the hell? And it was flashing just randomly in weird intervals. And I'd never seen this error before ever in my life. And I pulled out my phone compass, iPhone, and I pulled up the compass, and I opened it, and it said, compass error, cannot find true magnetic north. I was like, what the hell is going on? And so I ushered Ryan to come over, and Ryan has seen so much stuff on that ranch that I showed him the error on the controller for the drone. And he just looked at it for maybe 2 seconds, and he went, oh, yeah, that happens to my drone all the time. And then he walked off. He's so used to it.
Wow.
Cody pulled out his phone. He was looking at a stargazing app, so he had it up in the air, and we were looking at constellations on the phone, and they were just bouncing like back and forth, left and right. Like it couldn't find which way it was north. It was so bizarre.
So it was affected. The satellites were being affected.
Yeah, it was some. I think there was some magnetic energy, some electromagnetic energy that was strong enough in the area that it was making things believe that north was in a different direction.
Had he done testing or had been
yes
analyzed?
So one of the strangest stories too. There's a part on the ranch where he has a cabin. It's sort of built there, and then he used to park his 40-foot RV next to it, running east to west. And one day a lightning bolt hit his RV and completely incinerated it. We actually have a photo of it. There was a closed caption camera from a neighbor that caught it. Completely incinerated the RV. You can still find twisted, melted pieces of metal of this RV on the property. So he ended up, he's like, you know what? I'm going to put a storage container there in the same exact spot I put that RV. So he buys a storage container, drops it down. It's going east to west. It's right behind the cabin. And he says, let's just see what happens. And he said he loved having it there because after the RV exploded, he bought a Sprinter van. He said he could park it in between and it would block the wind. So there's the main living quarters. It's maybe 650 feet away from it in a straight line. And one morning, the caretaker who's staying at the main living quarters looks out the window and he doesn't see the shipping container. And he calls Ryan. He's like, hey, man, I know this sounds strange, but your shipping container's gone. And Ryan's like, what? How? And he goes, yeah, it's just gone. It's not there anymore. And he goes, what the hell? So he drove out there. And it turns out that the shipping container wasn't gone, but from his vantage point, the cabin was kind of blocking the view. The shipping container sometime overnight turned itself 90 degrees to where it was no longer going east to west. It was going north to south.
How big was the shipping container?
It's a big one. It's probably
like a train car size,
yes,
right?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, it's big.
Like 54 feet almost.
Probably. Yeah, it's your traditional shipping container.
Wow.
It's heavy. They didn't find any scratch marks on the ground, so they believe it was picked up and then turned.
It's a strong magnet.
There's a big, yeah, no kidding. Magnet could kill someone with that. It's not like an MRI. It actually dented the roof too. There's a dent in the roof where somehow when it got spun around, it hit the roof, and then now there's just a little gap that's maybe an inch from it to the cabin. So that had electromagnetic energy for many weeks, possibly months after, that slowly dissipated. But what was interesting is he said some days it would be stronger than other. Typically, you'll see that electromagnetic energy slowly just dissipate. You don't see fluctuations in it. And then the weirdest thing is, because up to this point, I had never had any experiences. I'm just a seeker. So there's a little creek nearby on the east side of it. And so Cody and I decided to go down there and just put up a trail cam pointing towards Skinwalker Ranch. We said, this is where we're getting the most energy. Let's just point it towards there. Strap it down. We get maybe 10, 15 feet away from it. And all of a sudden we hear this loud, bassy womb sound like a womb. And Cody likened it to waving a big piece of tin. To me, it sounds like a sound effect in Jurassic Park for like a pterodactyl if they were to flap their wings once. And I turned to him, I go, did you? Yeah, just a womb sound.
Oh.
And what the strangest and oddest and sort of bone-chilling thing is, it wasn't coming from around us, but it was coming right above our head. And so we just paused and we're like, what is that? And we heard it again. We heard it again. We heard it again. So then our eyes are to the sky, and I see this white light going from south to north for maybe 3 seconds tops, and then it just disappears. Now the clouds, it had been rainy the day before, but the clouds had completely dissipated. But in that moment, you're trying to go, what the hell did I just see? So I tell Cody, is there a cloud there? Just humor me for a second. Is there a cloud there? And he says, no. And I said, I saw a light for 3 seconds. Cody saw his own. He said it went directly down to earth, just slowly, not like a meteor, no tail or anything, just slowly in a straight line disappears. And then the third one we actually caught on camera, which you got to see, Richard, at that Southern Cali presentation where it was going east to west. We saw it for maybe 3 seconds. Now, we kept hearing that womb sound over and over again. But once those sounds stopped, we stopped seeing things in the sky. And it wasn't a satellite. It was way too low to be a satellite. We actually looked up Stellarium. Shout out to Stellarium. It wasn't a satellite, and it wasn't an airplane, and it was just one of those odd things. So after we stood there for maybe like 15 minutes, and luckily we caught all this on the trail cam. I always set it to video mode. I want to get as much data as possible. So then we decided to walk the property and then come back to main camp. So when we went back to main camp, we told Ryan and some people there what we'd heard and seen. We're like, were you guys making any sounds up here? We told them everything. And Ryan goes, no. He goes, but it's strange. I don't want to freak you guys out, but we could see your flashlights off in the distance. And I was looking at you through, he has a Psionics Aurora Pro night vision camera. And he said, when I was looking at you guys, I could see this strange light that was closer to Skinwalker Ranch. It was following you around for maybe 30 seconds. And then he snapped a picture of it, and then he said it disappeared, but he could only see it through night vision. And so I turned to Cody at that moment. I said, we're done. Like, no more investigating. This is it for us. So that land is very magical. We're just one of many people who've had strange experiences on there.
Do they know what the source of the electromagnetic? And I'm sure not only that, there's a radiation potential there too. So do they know the source of any of that, or are they able to?
It's interesting. So there is a lot of water running underneath Skinwalker Ranch, and it is solidic. So if you ever talk to James Keenan, the great James Keenan will tell you that it's very solidic, so it can hold a charge, the water underneath. However, to charge something that big in order to get fluctuations in compasses and have people see lights in the sky and things like that, it's something that we're still trying to figure out. The other thing that's very unique about the Uinta Basin is they have something called gilsonite. And gilsonite is a very light substance, a mineral composite that's only mined there for commercial use. It's the only place in the entire world where it's mined for commercial use, and you have a bunch of it there. It's very abundant and rich there. There's some other areas that do have gilsonite, but this is the only place that they mine it for commercial use. And it is slightly magnetic. It does have iron in it. And if you have a basin just sort of down in a dish shape and you have a whole bunch of land that's filled with this magnetic gilsonite, is that amplifying whatever energies in the area? Almost like a satellite dish, concentrating it in certain areas. That's one of the sort of, I would say, scientific explanations, possible scientific explanations, I should say. So they're still trying to figure things out. It's pretty crazy. Brandon Few just bought a satellite, his own satellite, to monitor Skinwalker Ranch.
You're kidding. Wow.
Yep. Yeah.
What does that cost?
I think it was 1.2 million or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
A bargain.
Exactly.
So what about the meteor that they said had crashed in that area? I don't know, 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago. Is there any validity to that, or could that have some effects or byproducts of this energy or electromagnetic radiation, or do you know?
I don't know anything about that other than if you have a large object hitting the earth, maybe it did disturb something or open something up, or it left something in the area.
And right, the earth absorbed it and went into the water, went into the whatever. So having said that, two suggestions as to what the potential of what's happening in the Uinta Basin. One comes from ufologists, obviously, about that area. And there's been a number of stories leaked or suggested by some of the renowned ufologists that says that there's a potential base under there, or actually up towards vernal, and of a number of reasons, and obviously in the ground down in the lower earth. But and then the other story comes from the Navajo, and their obviously issues with their cousins or whoever they were. So just real quick, can you tell us a little bit about what those are?
Sure. So I have heard the rumors that there is possible bases underneath. I've heard things such as that there's a tunnel that goes all the way from Dugway Proving Grounds, which is considered Area 52, all the way out.
That's huge.
It's huge. Yeah. So Dugway Proving Grounds is the largest land-wise military base that's known.
Right.
It would be a very long tunnel. We're talking hours of travel through a tunnel. I'm not saying it's impossible to do, but it can. And if not, I have heard that maybe there's some bases underneath, that maybe they're doing experimentation or they're trying to figure out what's going on there. The Navajo thing you talk about is from the Navajo went to war with the Utes during the Fearing time. It was like the mid 1800s. And it was believed that the Navajo cursed this area, and in particular, Skinwalker Ranch and the mesa that's there. So long before the Shermans went to the papers telling them about what's going on here, there was a lot of Native American tribes who did everything they could to go around this area whenever they would travel.
Right.
Because they just believe there's a lot of bad, evil stuff going on
Bad
there.
juju. What's
Exactly.
the water underneath? Is it an aquifer? Is it like an underground river? What's the water under?
Yeah,
I've seen the show, but I haven't watched as many episodes as you guys obviously have.
Sure. No worries. So I don't know a lot about it other than what James Keenan has said, as well as some other people. So there is a lot of groundwater that goes down there. They believe it goes all the way from like
wells,
that area. Yep.
maybe?
All the way up to Blind Frog Ranch.
Right.
And so during certain times of the year, there's actually like a pond on the mesa that's above Skinwalker Ranch. We did get a tour of the on top of the mesa once, but it was during April, and it's been a very, very, very dry year, so I didn't see any water whatsoever up there. But it is a very interesting area with a lot of lore and sightings that people have had on there.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, the one thing, and again, I'm just dip a little bit into some other peripheral information. So Latter-day Saints have a connection, not only from, like you said, the Great Salt Lake. You know, the Spanish Trail went up there from Santa Fe. You know, when Spain and they said they didn't invade, they discovered Mexico and, you know, the Aztecs, and they were really happy to be a part of them. But of course, then they stole all their gold and they spread their diseases. But, you know, the Aztec kings that were down there obviously made their way up too. And, you know, there's a bunch of stories about the gold mines, the stashed gold, and all the way up from the Spanish Trail, which is through Santa Fe, and up through, you know, Utah. And then all obviously the old maps that they found in Mexico lead all the way to the Great Lake, you know, the Great Salt Lake and the caves that you talk about. So, I mean, we're talking about that area is rich in just history and, you know, things that are going on. So you have all that stuff going on. I mean, one of the things I did read not too long ago is just the amount, not only of the element that you talked about, but the other richness in terms of the soil and the caves and just the things that they still don't know, you know, because there's so much up there and there's so much space. How far is Salt Lake, if you don't mind me asking, over to the Uinta Basin or Vernal or?
Sure, it's about a 2.5 hour drive. So
2.5 hours,
yep.
Yeah. So
yep, in the east.
I know there's a lot of stuff there. And then again, did you say that Ryan, right? So did you say Ryan believed he saw a dire wolf or something that was similar to it, or tracks or other indications maybe you didn't mention? But I just had a question about that because others have seen it, as you said, you know, the family that was at Skinwalker, that was their whole big thing. And then some of the stories from the OSAP and then Hunt for the Skinwalker, which is the other thing I wanted to talk to you about a little bit. Have you read Hunt for the Skinwalker?
Yep. Yeah.
Have you read the follow-up book by Lukaski and all those that the second volume, if you will?
No, I don't think I've read that one.
The reason why I mentioned it, and I do have the book and I'm going to get it, but it also actually talks about more specifically the work that they were doing there. And again, what's your thoughts about that in terms of just So in Hunt for the Skinwalker and the Wachowski, they talked about these hitchhiker effects.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you know? What's your feelings or opinions on just that? Or because the Indians and the people who live in that area have often talked about them going through their lands, perching on their fences, perching on the bluffs, watching people, and they look like wolves or they look like animals. The next thing you know, there's this change or whatever happens as a result
Could
of
the
that.
dire wolf they saw have been a skinwalker?
Right. Yeah. No.
Or was a skinwalker itself? So
Yep.
I mean that's part of one of the things that I kind of wish, and this is the reason why I go into this, is there's a lot that's not being shared on Skinwalker Ranch, and this is my criticism, and it's a good criticism, by the way, and I probably understand it. But again, this is one of those areas that we have to be sensitive. This paranormal aspect of what I believe is part of the phenomenon, how it represents, how it manifests, and whether it's energy, whether it's globes, whether it's spirits, ghosts, whatever you want to call it, and lore, it's still the same energy, it's still the same thing, and it happens a lot. I just wish, like in Skinwalker, they would pursue or at least express what's happening to those the people who are involved there, what they take home, the things that they, obviously the people who have been involved in it talk about there's orbs that follow them home. There's these big old wolves with red eyes that are in the backyard of their houses. This is the Jay Stratton story with his twins and his wife all the way back to his home. And some of the others is a story about one of them when they first did OSAP, being in the number 2 homestead and feeling like there was something there, and the guy tried to make communication, and there was a particular response that it appeared that they wanted to communicate back with him, but then he took off. He ran, scared the mess out of him. So what's your thoughts about that and how it's manifested? And do you agree that there is a lot more than that they're not telling us, probably for many reasons?
Yes, I think so. You hit the nail on the head with the hitchhiker effect, which is what we would categorize as paranormal.
Right.
It's interesting because I don't like to MUFON sort of, when I first joined, got me in the habit of categorizing things, and then when I joined the ERT team, I was like, okay, I got to stop decategorizing things. I got to throw everything on the floor and look at all of this.
That's exactly right.
I can't just look at just the alien aspect. I can't just look at the paranormal.
Nuts and bolts. You can't look at just the nuts and bolts.
You can't. And Skinwalker Ranch is the exact same thing. You cannot just go, oh, we're just going to look at the nuts and bolts in the sky. The hitchhiker effect is scary in the sense that there has been stories of people being on the ranch for a day, weeks, years, nothing happens to them. And then the minute they go home, either they or even worse, a loved one starts to have strange experiences. And this is what you hear sometimes from paranormal investigators. They'll go into an area that's high with energy. They'll do all their stuff. And then they go home and all of a sudden it follows them. And we don't know why. We don't know how. And it is something that, like you, Richard, frustrates me as well, because I've heard all the cast talk. They're at Phenomicon every single year. I'll see them again this year. And there's always the question of, tell us about the hitchhiker effect. And all of them get very quiet all of a sudden. It's like they do not want to speak of it. I don't know if they believe that it's going to reactivate things or bring it upon themselves again. But it's one of those fascinating parts of the phenomenon that you want to sort of get some more stories and insight on. But it is the one thing I would say that they're least willing to talk about.
Yeah, they do not share that stuff.
No.
Maybe they also don't want people hearing that and trying to get out there to make that happen or something like that.
Or it's in addition to that, and that it's this other area that we don't know nothing about, or we have, and everybody has their thoughts and feelings, but this whole idea about sort of the paranormal, and that's not necessarily the best word for it either. It could be just the way the energy is. It could be the way it reacted. Then you get into other areas that, well, we don't talk because that's taboo. How can you see your grandmother? How can you hear from your grandfather? How come you see apparitions? How come, whatever, all the various things. How do I know that diary or something that my grandmother, who nobody else knew about, I woke up one night from the dream and they said, go look to that drawer over there. All these things. And yet we find across the board, especially with the ERT and abduction stories and other accounts, that this is directly related to the same thing. So you can't separate it. And yet we try to. So not only do we have a tendency to do that with MUFON, with the nuts and bolts, that's why the ERT, and that's why we became part of the ERT. But you see it in shows like Skinwalker, because there's much more anomalous stuff, whatever you want to call it, anomalous, paranormal going on, that I think would be interesting. The only problem is how do you share it? It's like somebody saying, I think they should talk about religion in church. I'm sorry, in schools. Well, then the question is whose religion? Yours or everybody? Well, no, the point is, whose religion? Everybody's, right? So, and that's the thing that, you can't control, because then it's about the individual. It's not about whatever we're trying to share in terms of how we influence people in society. But that's my only frustration. And so get back, we'll finalize your time at the ranch there. Did he talk, other than what you've already mentioned, about other paranormal or strange or weird things?
Yes. So Ryan has days worth. He's someone that has hours and hours and hours of knowledge from the area, as well as personal experiences. Him and his mother have, and people that have been on the property. I will pass along your guys' info. I think he'd be an amazing guest to have on.
I was just going to ask.
Yes.
Thank you for reading my mind.
Yes.
I really like to have Ryan on, to be honest with you.
He would be an amazing guest, because when there was,
can we all go camp out?
He would like, yeah. He's
that's
one of
the other thing.
if you're willing to dare to camp out there,
we go camping all over the country. We love going out to Zion. I'd head out your way.
Good. Yeah.
You and I have talked about it. It would be really cool that'd be a cool trip to just go up there and do a MUFON thing. I mean, like anything else, because we're researchers, we're investigators, we're people who explorers, we want to evolve. We want to expand our awareness, and we want also to share that with others, because if they are who they are, and I don't think it's a negative spin, I don't think it's a fear spin, I don't think it's a control spin, even though that's all over the TV, that's all over the program. See, I don't see that. I think what they're doing is trying to communicate, help us understand, and take us along. Again, that's just my opinion, not anybody else's here. And so that's just my energy, if you will. And the more we can do that, the more we can share. But if you can, pass it on,
of course,
to Ryan, and we would love to have him and just his stories, and just from another perspective in addition. And so I think that'd be cool.
Absolutely, yeah. And he's just such a down to earth guy, and he really is doing the work that others before him have done for the Uinta Basin, and to allow so many people. Every single time I've been out there, he's had other people out there that I've met and have become friends with, experiencers, people who are seeking, people who've driven across country just to kind of hang out there. And he's always been very gracious about that. I will say it is a private property, so don't just show up and hop the fence, people.
Right, yeah.
But
trying to hope for the hitchhiker effect, just sticking your arm over the fence.
It's exactly. And you do have to sign a waiver, because there is sort of, like you said, there's a hitchhiker effect. Even my mom, she goes, well, what about the hitchhiker effect if we go there? And I go, well, that's the risk you got to take. You can't just.
It's an energy thing, though.
It is. Yeah. And I don't know. They always say that your intentions going in is going to predict what
Absolutely.
happens.
So before we end there, and I just want to make sure I didn't miss it. So what was above your head?
So I've listened to that tape over and over again. What's weird is, as time goes on, that womb sound gets a little lighter and lighter and lighter. And we heard it. It's on tape probably about a dozen times. So the camera will film, I think, 5-minute clips, and then there's a 10-second reset. And I set it to the max because I want as much data as possible. I don't care about going through it. So I think we have at least a dozen of those. So talking with people, and it seems like you get this response from a lot of the people that are Bigfoot hunters or cryptid hunters, which is before a sighting happens, a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times they hear some sort of sound. A lot of them, they equate it to like the clicking of a door closing.
Oh, I see.
Or opening. Ours was a little different. I wouldn't say it was a door opening. It was a very bassy womb sound that was above us. I believe, and once again, this is just my own beliefs from being there, is that whatever we saw in the sky that sound was them popping in and out of our existence, our reality, our dimension, whatever you want to call it. That was just a byproduct of them punching through to our side. Because once we stopped hearing those sounds, we no longer saw those lights in the sky. It was, I believe they were correlated and somehow together.
Now, did you guys have tri-field meters or any of those other things to record energy spikes or any of the frequency, the spectrum analyzer, in terms of just seeing if there's any frequency fluctuations while you were there, or did you have any of that?
Yes, so we did have a tri-field meter. We did not have a spectrum analyzer. However, when we were seeing those lights in the sky, Cody, he was a little more, when it was happening, I was sort of like, I didn't know what was going on. He at least had some ability to say, hey, get out the tri-field meter. And so we had it on a setting where you can hear the sound, and it's supposed to be higher. We did not see any spikes, though, or any sort of strange electromagnetic activity while we were seeing these lights. It is a little hard to say because we were kind of keeping our eyes to the sky, but we did. If you watch the video, you can actually hear this tick, 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 tick thing in the background, and that's the electromagnetic meter kind of doing its thing.
So one of the things I again, this is part of what the belief is when you have a frequency monitor or an analyzer, spectrum analyzer. So one of the things over at Skinwalker and in other sites, and this is proven to those people who like to do EVP stuff in terms of, electromagnetic voice analyzers in haunted houses and all. But there's this spike indication if an energy, right? So it's an energy thing. That's the whole point. And so like Skinwalker and like some of these other folks who use those, it would have been interesting to see if you were able to at least monitor a band, a certain set of bands and the frequency range. If there was any fluctuations, again, would it have been something that should have been picked up? It's like a camera that picks up things that the normal eye doesn't. The wavelength of radio frequencies changes, even though, we may or may not see it. So a spectrum analyzer may indicate, well, all of a sudden, hey, we're getting a spike, or we're getting an indication, or, tri-field meter will do the same thing. So I thought that was a pretty interesting. I was just wondering if they used it.
No, and I like where your mind goes, because mine went the same. When I started analyzing, I go, we have an electromagnetic, we have a field meter, tri-field meter, but it doesn't record historical data. So Cody and I actually built our own with Raspberry Pis, these little mini computers and these sensors. So this Saturday, I'm actually going to ask Ryan, hey, is there any chance we can come back out? Because I want to put these devices out in multiple places on the property and just gather that data. I don't care how big it is. I want to see when these things fluctuate and do they correlate with seeing things in the sky, how we're feeling, any sort of high strangeness. So we're slowly learning the ropes on doing these investigations. You really have to go back and analyze and go, okay, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? How are we going to do this different? And so you're right on the money, Richard. And that's why we built these devices. We want days worth of data as far as electromagnetic energy, temperature, all that kind of stuff. So
and I think as we go, really, as we start to understand spectrum, as we start to understand how wave, lengths are analyzed, we know that it relates to everything. Us, others, our own energy, the water, the ground, the sun, UAP sightings, when they phase in, phase out, do they adjust their frequency? Their light. And are they able to go into wherever they are to not wherever they go? And then, of course, we have many people who are a little bit more adept at what we call, the sixth senses, which we all have. Some people a little bit more frequency. But again, the point is we notice that their energy signatures are different. We notice, and you can actually, with the remote viewers, I remember at Stanford, this is one of the things that they did. They looked at the people's health and they ran all kinds of tests to see was there a fluctuation. Same thing with the OSAP program. They tested all of their people and they wanted to see if there was these reactions. And so it would be a wise thing if you could stick those Raspberry Pi related things out there or get a spectrum analyzer, just so that the data will say, hey, there's nothing, it's quiet. All of a sudden, you hear the crickets, the next thing the crickets go out. An energy field is detected or some kind of signature is detected. Is that indicative of something we call it paranormal, but it may just be our ability now to tune in where we didn't know the AM frequency was there. Now all of a sudden we can tune into it, and all of a sudden it shows itself, as do night vision related stuff. That's the whole concept of night vision. It's just now you're seeing in a different spectrum, and if we can understand that, then I think it'll go further, both in what you all do, what we're doing, MUFON's doing, and then of course what's happening at the ranches there. So
absolutely, no, I think more data, more better. That's my
more data,
my
more
motto.
better.
And I think technology's gotten to a point where we can tap into those frequencies a lot more easier, and these tools are available to the general public now. It used to be just military that kind of had these devices,
and that's the
not
cool
anymore.
thing, and that's one of the things that we want to share. I mean, just think about it. You know as good as I do, they have those post analyzers outside, cameras that they have preloaded software that of all known items or all known craft, right, and things that would be in the air and natural phenomenon. And yet these things are able to scan the sky in a 360 degree or wherever. And when they see something that's abnormal or anomalous, either take a picture or they track it. Again, another sensor, similar to what we were talking about the VASCO project earlier. They were able to detect anomalies, transient anomalies, and then all of a sudden they're making hypothesis and they're researching it a little bit more. Then they show some correlations. Again, it's the scientific approach, not just the paranormal or we don't understand it. We're trying to do the best that we can to use that kind of approach to try to at least get us some insights as to what they are. So
absolutely.
Cool. So I do have a couple of questions for you.
Absolutely.
So this was at the presentation. Now, I don't know if this is true. Is this the same as Deborah's story?
No. So this is an ERT case. So this was part of the
Right.
ERT best of.
So
case.
let me ask you, and I had to ask you because I knew they asked you to do it. We were there the previous year. You had your case.
It doesn't have any rabbits in it.
Yeah,
that
well,
question?
we can talk about that. And
I love
Susan
your
and
case.
the Jackrabbit case. But people don't know there's a companion case that Dustin and I first met over that's almost exactly like the Jackrabbit or rabbits, and they have that associated with everything. But so if you don't mind, because you did it at the symposium, are you able to speak to this beautiful soul case? Because I really wanted to hear it.
Sure. So this is another one of those ERT cases where you start talking with the person and they usually ask you one question, which is, where do I begin? It's just a lifetime of experiences. So I loved investigating this case. I loved talking with the experiencer. So his case, his sort of story begins when he was 3 or 4 years old, is the first memory of something strange happening. He said he's laying in his bed, and all of a sudden he sees a dinner plate sized golden spider crawling along the ceiling towards him. And he said, in this moment, I should have been afraid. I should have had some fear, but he didn't for whatever reason. And he said this spider got to where it was right above him, and then it slowly descended from like a single thread until it touched his chest. And he said it just sort of like melted in with me, this golden spider. Fast forward to when he was 8 years old, he was riding his bicycle to basketball practice. And he gets to basketball practice, and they say, hey, basketball practice is canceled today. I think it was a holiday. And he says, okay, so he's riding back home. While he's riding home, he gets hit by a truck. And he's rushed to the hospital. The doctors were very frank with his parents. They said, we do not know if he's going to make it or not. And luckily, after weeks of being in the hospital, he sort of got out of it and was given a second chance at life. But the other thing he received after this near-death experience was being able to see into the spiritual realm. He began seeing apparitions, ghosts, and most of all these like shadow people. And he tells me it didn't help that as an 8-year-old, his bedroom was in the dark basement of his parents' home. At 12 years old, he went to a Boy Scouting trip up in Schofield Reservoir. It's in Utah, beautiful area. And like both of you know, there's this strange compulsion for experiences to go off on their own to a place that they've never been, to get away for contact. And that's exactly what happened. He said, I broke away from the troop. He didn't know where he was going or why. But he went off on his own and he found a bench and he just lay down on the bench and he stared in the sky and he saw what he described and drew a picture of it as a black boomerang shaped craft with like a little black triangle on the inside. Saw it for a couple moments and it just shot off. And he went back to his troop and never told them about it. So when he was 19, he enlisted in the military and he fought bravely in the Iraq War. They were given 1 day to go to a historical site. And there's a picture I showed in the presentation of him standing in this desert area, and up in the upper right-hand corner, there's this big like building. And he said that's what was one of Saddam Hussein's palaces. And he said this area is historical because they believe that, during biblical times, Iraq sits where Babylon once was. And they believe that this is the exact area in which Daniel and the lion's den occurred. Oh. So on the same day, he sees what's known as a jinn. And I didn't know much about jinns other than, him telling me and doing research. But jinns are shape-shifting entities that share the same world with us. And he described it just as a lot of people have, which is they can shapeshift, but they're usually seen as what we describe as genies. And he described it the exact same way. He said from the mid-thigh up, very human-like. From mid-thigh down, there was a thick white smoke that did not move. And he said he saw it for maybe 10 or 15 seconds before it disappeared. And it's funny when you do research about it. The Quran, the Holy Quran, talks about jinns, and it says they're born from a smokeless flame of fire, and that they're like us. They're given free will; they can do what they want. And if you do any research about it, it is shocking how many like men and women come back from the Middle East, are soldiers that have encounters of jinns and high strangeness. It's quite remarkable. Yeah. So he said this exact same day, 3 of their vehicles' batteries died with no explanation. And also he said that they started hearing this strange interference on their radios, almost like a communication they couldn't make out. And they had never heard it before or heard it since then. And so he started talking with some of the other soldiers that had been there in longer stints. And he found a lot of people that had UFO sightings and paranormal encounters and even sightings of cryptids. And I actually have this quote from him. I was talking with him, just asking him some follow-up questions. And he told me that Iraq is a strange country. Generations of wars and bloodshed have given the land a strange feeling. If you've been to Gettysburg, you've felt what I'm talking about. Mm. And we just talked a little bit more, and he simply summed it up by saying the Middle East is a trip. He comes back home, fights bravely in the war. And actually, let me back up a little bit. So he while he was over in Iraq, he started realizing he had some sort of intuition, be able to see into the future. And this started as something very simple. He said with insane accuracy, he could tell whether or not some of his fellow soldiers were going to receive mail that day. And he said it became a running gag. People would yell out like, "Hey, Jacob, am I getting mail today?" And this would come up much more handy, though, when he was on the battlefield. On 2 separate occasions, he was walking towards an IED, unknowingly an improvised explosive device that was buried in the ground. He said both times while he was walking, doing his rounds, he felt this intense magnetic sensation throughout his entire body that forced him to stand still. He said it was almost like a message saying, "Do not move." Wow. And after a couple moments, these IEDs would go off, and the shockwave alone would be enough to injure him. But luckily, had he continued walking, he probably wouldn't be with us today. When he gets home from the war, he suffers from PTSD, depression, anxiety, and he's doing everything he can to try and bring some sort of peace in his life. So he finds something called Qi Gong. It's an ancient Chinese philosophy and meditation. Yeah. And he finds that he's really good at meditating. He can get in really deep states that maybe take people months or years to get into. So one night, it's nighttime, and he's meditating and gets in one of these deep states, and he's visited by the presence of a friend, a really good friend who he described to me as being the most spiritual person he's ever met. And she wanted to let him know that she had passed on. And he told me, my time in war has given me a very skewed view of death. However, I was very sad that she had passed away. However, I was very happy that she was with me in this moment. And he began conversing with her, and he just simply asked her, "What is death like?" And she told him, "No matter what I tell you, you will never understand." And she said, "You think of death as being linear. It's not. It's more like a spiral, is what she told him. And they conversed some more, and he went to bed. And the next morning, he woke up to some phone calls from family and friends, telling him that she had passed on the day before. So the reason he reached out to the ERT is he was woken in bed next to his wife. His wife was still sound asleep. And there was a portal that opened up on the wall. And he was like, what the hell? And all of a sudden, the top half of this mantis being popped out of the portal. And he's no stranger to conflict. He said, when I saw this thing, I knew that I just had to confront it. So he jumped out of bed. He got a couple feet away from it. And this being waved its arm off to the side and opened up another portal. And he said he could look in there and he saw what he described as very beautiful women that are being flirtatious. But he said the environment they were in was very hospital-like and sterile. And the being spoke to him telepathically and said, look what I have for you. And he said this sort of upset him. And he turned to his wife, who was still dead to the world in the bed, and he pointed to her and he said out loud to the being, do you see how hot my wife is? And which for any of the married people here listening to this, that's the exact right response you should have. And he said the being gave him a very confused look and tilted its head to the side robotically and then went back in the portal before it closed up. So the family ended up adopting a dog. They had a fellow family member that adopted this dog, but they also had twins at the same time. And it was too much for them. They were going to give this dog to the shelter. And Jacob has a huge heart. So he's like, I'll take the dog. So they adopt a dog, but he said this dog's a bit of a troublemaker. It has to go to the bathroom like every 4 hours, right? So him and his wife find themselves up late at night, random hours of the night, taking the dog outside. So one night, Jacob takes the dog outside. It's the middle of the night. The dog's doing its important dog business. And he looks up in the sky and he sees what he described as like a sleek black oblong craft just hovering there. And he sees it for a couple seconds. And next thing he knows, he's waking up in bed. He says, you know what? It may have been a dream, but it was real to me. Like it was like completely real. His wife went out one night and she was taking the dog out and she looked directly above her head and noticed that she couldn't see any stars, though it was like a clear night. And so she's like, what the hell? And so she looked further out and she noticed that she could see stars like way further out. And she noticed that there was something big hovering above the house, blocking out a lot of the sky. So she grabbed the dog and ran inside. And then the sighting that was part of that case is another night he went outside and he saw what he described and he actually drew a picture of it. He had a friend make an AI rendering of it, which he says is pretty damn accurate. Says it looked like two black SUVs that had been welded in the back. And it was hovering above a tree. And he says, I know this doesn't make sense, but when I saw it, I just went, oh, there's a vehicle. and then he said, wait a minute, it's hovering in the sky. What the hell? So he said he watched it for a little bit and then he reached in his pocket to grab his phone. And that's when this craft had this bright blue light that just started flashing at him very quickly. And then the craft turned on its side, though the light stayed in the same spot, and then it shot off. And when I asked him, like, well, how did it shoot off? He said, in my time in the military, I saw a lot of hypersonic jets. And he said, this thing that I saw made them all look like snails. So he would later convert to Buddhism and continue his meditative practices. And one night he's practicing, he's meditating, and he gets in a very deep state, and he has this incredible vision. And he says it looked like a ball of energy or light that was tunneling through the earth. He said he could see it go through the mountains of Texas, go up through Utah, and it arrived at this very specific building he described. It went up to the specific floor, a specific wing, and it went into a specific room. And he saw this ball of light go in, and there's a woman laying on the bed, and he saw this ball of light go into her abdomen. And it was such an intense vision, he decided to share it with his mother, who he described to me as being very open-minded. And when he told her the story, she got really emotional. And she told him, that's the exact hospital and the room that you were born in. That was me that you saw.
Wow.
So Jacob believes that this phenomenon, whatever it is displaying itself to us in ways that we understand or align with our own belief system. He also shared with me that his mom said that she knew a doctor that was LDS, Mormon, Christian, who was delivering a baby one time. And not too long after the baby came into this world, he saw what he described as like a ghostly arm and hand come into view and touch the baby's forehead. And he believes that that's the moment that the baby was gifted its soul. Wow. And Jacob believes that he saw the moment he was gifted his soul. So if this is true, I always go back to that first encounter. Like, why show this child a giant golden spider? So I start looking up
symbolically what it
yes means. I start you're 100% on the money, Richard. I start looking up the symbolism of it, and I found this amazing article talking about spiders and how we tend to think that the webs that they weave are just tools, but in fact, they believe that these are more than that. That they're actually spiders appear to offload cognitive tasks to their webs, making them one of a number of species with a mind that isn't fully confined within its head. There's an amazing article from Quantum Magazine, Thoughts of a Spider Web by Joshua Sokol. So in essence, the spider web demonstrates how consciousness can be extended beyond the physical boundaries of the organism, blurring the lines between the internal and external aspects of cognition. So is it possible that experiencers consciously or unconsciously are spinning their own web, allowing them to get glimpses into the worlds that we don't normally see? And I started thinking, what about the religious aspects of this? And like you said, Richard, the symbolism behind it. There are a lot of religions and cultures and philosophies that talk about the golden spider. And a lot of them have to do with, Eastern philosophies, Native American. And I found one from Taoism, which is, sometimes pronounced Taoism here because it starts with a T.
Mm-hmm.
But Taoism is an ancient Chinese philosophy and religion that is in line with Buddhism and Qigong, which he also, practiced. And they talk about the golden thread, and it said the Taoist perspective is if that you could fully perceive and align yourself with the golden thread, you would become a fully realized being. You would be conscious of and connected to all and everything in the universe. So
the irony of, and again, you talk about a whole new unpacking that stuff that just, because this is the point that I am making. So one of the things that you said is our relationship, whatever that means, predicated on our own perceptions, our own way of looking at it, in terms of the way we manifest and the way we think. Because in esoteric land, in another of those philosophies and ancient knowledge, we formulate things based on that concept ourselves. So whether you have a spider, whether you have an eye, the eye of Horus, the eye of Ra, nowadays, whether again, there's the symbolism related to all the animals and how they relate. Because if we are able to manifest, and I think that we manifest in ways that we understand. And it may take on a bird, it may take on a butterfly, it may take on a hummingbird, as it relates to spirits. And in order for energy or consciousness, and I'm getting way off, I'm going to come back, I promise. In order for us to understand who we are, right, we're sort of talking to ourselves in a school of knowledge, a school of experience, a school of a journey of how we're learning about how those things are. And so if you take the jinns, and again, it's clouded and colored. Rumi is one of my favorite, 12th century philosophers, and he said a lot of stuff. But again, if your religion or your culture or your focus, whatever it is, whether it's religion, whether it's just abstract, whether it's whatever, that's how you're going to manifest what you believe or don't believe. And then we talk about all these people who are able to connect and not connect. Are they special or whatever? But in reality, in my opinion, and I'm going down a road here, we all have it. You dream every single day. You daydream every single day. All of a sudden you think of something, a call, a person, an item, a smell, or whatever your senses are picking up, and it speaks to you. And so I'm getting to the point that maybe this is part of what we want to do here on the precipice, is to have people think about their own awareness and how they're interacting, not only with who they are in a daily thing, because it's important, but these other concepts and thoughts about the world just in general. So whether it's ufology, whether it's the ERT, whether it's the paranormal, whether it's, whatever. And so I just think that I just want everybody to understand or believe or just think of it as our own intuitive knowledge. And that is something that we should all listen and be confident enough that we have an intuition that does speak truth, whatever that means. I'm not talking about clouded. I'm not talking about colors. I'm not talking about food. I'm not talking about customs. I'm not talking about that. That's how it manifests itself in terms of its talking back. But I just find it so interesting from this guy's perspective. You just went all over the place. You went to ancient history in Iraq. You went to his own philosophy with Buddhism, and you went to his wife and his family, and we went to ufology, and we went to, and it's all connected, just like what we talked about with the ranches and other things. And I just find it interesting that it's all about energy. It's all about how that manifests itself, and again, I went off. I digress.
No, well said.
Do you see their messages from Skywalker in the comments? We got like a minute to wrap up.
Anyway, and I apologize. We're already there.
That's okay.
Dustin, great for you to take your time to be here. Any closing thoughts that you'd like to give us? And I know we're almost there. I just want to make sure that everybody sees that that's how we can contact you.
Thank you.
And,
just keep watching the skies and keep doing what you guys are doing. This is amazing, and I'm so proud of you guys. And I think they couldn't have picked a better duo to do this. So I think Earl's smiling down on you guys for sure.
Thanks, Dustin.
Right.
You too.
Thank you, Dustin. We're going to have you back when you come back from your second trip up there if I'm not with you.
Okay. Yeah. You two make it on out.
All right. We're going to close out. Thank you, Dustin.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
See ya.
All right. So closing thoughts there, CJ.
Oh, I don't know. I know we got to wrap up quick. Just how words fail us. We have all these words, paranormal, ghost, skinwalker, blah, 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 blah. And like how efficient telepathic communication probably is over all these words that don't quite say what, is happening and stuff.
Yeah.
That was kind of my takeaway, was just the language. The words always fail us.
Yeah.
Back to you.
So I have two things. One is the book I wanted to recommend. This is the Utah UFO display book. This is Frank Salisbury, PhD, all kinds of great stuff. Joseph Jr. Hicks wrote this stuff. This is from Dustin's land, and I think it's a great book. You should get it. I think you'd like it, and it'll tell you a lot about that history. Finally, just some closing thoughts. I just want everybody it's just something to think about. You're not in the universe. You are the universe, an intrinsic part of ultimately. You're not a person. You're a focal point where the universe is becoming conscious of itself. And then what an amazing miracle that is. And so that's my thoughts, and I'm going to stick with it.
Eckhart Tolle, the little Irish gremlin himself.
He is.
He
is. Another one in the can.
In the books, in the history books.
All right, until next time.
Thank you, Bill, Skywatcher.